Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to paint this eggplant for Sketchbook Sunday. I'm working in my Arteza 8.5 by 8.5 inch sketchbook, the watercolor one, and I'm using the artsy watercolor paint that I reviewed about a week ago on my channel. I really like this paint. It's very affordable, around 20 bucks, and the colors are great. They mix well. The only caveat to this set is that on Amazon they say that the cadmium red and cadmium yellow are actual cadmium colors. They also say it's non-toxic, so I would like you to make sure that you just do your research before buying it. I wouldn't buy it for a child, but for an adult that's responsible in the studio, I would say absolutely. It's a price that can't be beat, and the quality is pretty good. I'm sketching with an HB mechanical pencil. This is a 0.9 millimeter Bic color pencil, just one of the, not colored pencils, mechanical pencils, just one of the plain ones you can get at the office supply store or department store or whatever. It comes in a big pack. And I like using a soft pencil like this because you can draw lightly and still have a decent enough dark line that erases easily if you need to. Now I'm starting off by wetting the eggplant and putting in an overall wash. I'm using a grayed lavender mix on the bottom for kind of a shadow, and also around the edges because I've got more of a light kind of hitting it on the bulbous area, and I want to have, you know, those shadows towards the edges to give it that illusion of roundness. And I'm using just a brighter bit of lavender in the middle, and also throwing in some yellow. Yellow makes the lavender pop a little bit and warms it up a bit, so I won't end up with a, you know, bright purple eggplant. It will have more of that eggplant tone to it because of the yellow neutralizing the color a little bit. I'm using a sap green color for the top of the kind of the stem and leaf area of the eggplant. I did notice that some of the colors in the set are not what we would use as customary color names in the US, so I'm just using customary color names. I'm adding in some burnt sienna, and I am also just kind of defining the edges with a little bit of a shadowy tone. I'm adding some more burnt sienna mixed with a little bit of green to darken it up a bit, and I am using that for the shadow areas. And I think I put a little bit of Prussian blue in there as well, just to give it a little bit of oomph. I found that you know, you could use ultramarine blue. I was using Prussian in some of these mixes, so I just found that it worked pretty well. And as if I recall on the Amazon listing, the Prussian blue is actually made with phthalo blue and black, so you shouldn't have light fast issues with that, if I'm remembering correctly. But as always, do your due diligence when you are considering purchasing paint. And just to be completely honest, every time you see my sleeve reach over my sketchbook, it's because I'm like advancing a next episode of something I'm watching on Hulu. This took me in total just under an hour to complete, and it was a lot of fun. I think that it would be an excellent challenge, and maybe I'll do this some month, do like a grocery store challenge and challenge myself to try produce that I've never eaten before, which I probably would only be able to do a couple days of this because I like to try pretty much everything, but challenge myself with produce that I haven't eaten before and challenge myself to draw it and then eat it, because, you know, you've got a limited window. If you buy like produce, you've got to kind of draw it that day and eat it in the next couple of days so it doesn't, you know, wither and go bad. I have to say that I enjoyed painting this eggplant much more than I enjoyed eating it. My plan was that I was going to buy this eggplant instead of buying the frozen eggplant that I put on my pizza, and I was going to bake this so I didn't have, you know, because a frozen eggplant I think has been pre-fried because it's got quite a bit of calories in it, and I figured I would just bake this and put it on my pizza, and then I'd save all these calories and I wouldn't even notice a difference in the taste, and it'd be cheaper too. But I did notice a difference in the taste quite a bit, to be honest, and I'm back to buying the frozen eggplant. But it was a fun experiment, and I really enjoyed painting it. I'm just using less water in my eggplanty violet mix and pink mixes, kind of mauve mixes, to do the striation on the skin. I'm basically just making stripes of varying thickness lines, and you stack up enough of those, and then you're going to be building that visual pattern on the fruit. Now the texture of the eggplant is very smooth and kind of shiny. I would say kind of like a semi-gloss sheen to it, but it's got this really interesting patterning with all of the stripes that are in the skin. So it almost imparts a texture, but you got to make sure that you get that pattern on there without sacrificing the surface texture of the fruit. So you can see the area that's really light in the center. That is my highlight, and I'm trying to kind of paint around it and keep it pretty pretty light. Now it's really easy to get a good sheen with colored pencils, which I do believe, I made this picture a couple weeks ago. I'm kind of forgetting. Here I'm scrubbing out a little bit here to soften those hard edges around the shadow. But you can always go in with a colored pencil later and you can get that sheen really easy just by gently shading and highlighting with the pencils. Since they're kind of opaque, I like the Prismacolors because they're probably the most opaque. Prismacolors and Derwent Color Soft are probably my most opaque colored pencils. They work really well for that. And I did pre-wet the shadow area, and there's kind of a double shadow. There's a hard shadow right up next to the eggplant, and then there's a softer shadow, more diffuse shadow further away where, different lights are hitting it and causing the shadow. So I'm painting in the more diffused one first. And I like the texture that I'm getting there. I think I used ultramarine, burnt sienna, and I might have used a little bit of that purple color just to almost give it like a Payne's gray effect. I'm not sure. I think this set does come with a Payne's gray. If you prefer that, you can use that. Absolutely. That's a mix, so you will get some of that separation happening when you have in a really juicy wash, which is really pretty. I like that texture that you can get when you have a multiple pigment color and it kind of separates out on the paper. Now I'm going in with some more color on the stem because I didn't really have it as green as I wanted it. And I'm giving this a quick dry so I can keep layering up. The only time I don't want to use a hairdryer or a heat tool to dry while I'm working is if I'm working with a color that granulates heavily and I really want to maximize that granulation, or if I'm using a salt effect. Those are the only two times I will avoid using a hairdryer or a heat tool to dry my work. Now I'm adding some warmth by going in with some yellow ochre and some thinned down burnt sienna just to give it those other undertones that I see, because it's not like purple white stripes. That's not it. There's more subtle tones that you see, and I want to make sure I represent them to give the eggplant the warmth that it has. The lightest, coolest spot on the eggplant is going to be the shadow because, the highlight rather, because that is the bounced white light in my studio that's casting that. But the actual tone of the eggplant is warmer. So I want to make sure I have that contrast. Also, the shadow will be a little bit on the cool side. It's sitting on a white piece of paper. But I think the shadow is fine. I think I've got that tone pretty well. And I'm just adding a little more detail in the stem with a darker mix of green. Now I want to have that secondary shadow that's really close to the eggplant and a little bit harder. Doing that with some Prussian blue. I think I'd use Prussian blue and burnt umber for that. I might use some Payne's gray. Boy, my memory is failing me. I should really record these right after I do them. And now I'm using this really, really pale pastel, almost celery green color to do some highlights on the stem and leaf, and I'm using a little bit of a lime peel color too, and I'm using some of the cream to brighten up areas in the flesh of the eggplant where I don't want it to be stark white. I really like the range of colors in the Prismacolor line. I recently, a couple of years ago, there was a really good price on the 150 set on Amazon. I think I got it for like 59 bucks. I haven't seen it at that price since. But I jumped on it at that price because I knew I was wearing a lot of my Prismacolors down to nubs, and I knew I'd need them eventually. And I was really pleased because there were a lot of really light pastel colors that I didn't have in my previous set of 144, which had a bunch used up, in my previous set of, I don't know, 36 or 75 or whatever I had when I was a kid. So there was a really nice addition of colors in that 150 set. So, if you find it a great price or you want to treat yourself, that's definitely a wonderful, ask for Christmas type of present. I think it's around $90 now, which I think is still a bargain, because if you go and buy these open stock, you pay usually around $2 a pencil. After you do get a big set, I would recommend, as you use them up, get them open stock. You're going to go through white and probably indigo, terracotta. Those are the colors I always have to pick up individually, but I like them. I'm just careful when I sharpen them, careful not to drop them, all of that stuff, because they are a delicate pencil. But man, oh man, it's really hard to beat the blendability and the opacity of them. That's not for everybody. Not everybody likes that effect, but that's a quality I look for in color pencil, because I use them on top of other media mainly. I will mainly use them on top of watercolor or on top of alcohol marker or water-based marker work, and it just works really well for me. Well, I hope you enjoyed this today. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and that's all I have for you today. Enjoy the weekend. Until next time, happy crafting.